Today in Rich in Relationship, we're going to talk about
The unconscious mind as a source of self-sabotage and self-leadership in divorce. Let's face it, the unconscious mind, in many ways, is running the show. We suffer. We feel less than every time we lose control of ourselves. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. And today we're talking about the role of the unconscious mind in divorce, but really it could be in life. Let's face it, the unconscious mind, which is at least 80% of who we each are, in many ways is running the show. In fact, to some extent, the concept of self-sabotage is really when our conscious mind goes, what the heck is going on here? Why did I do that? And our unconscious mind is doing what it was programmed to do. It feels like self-sabotage. Why am I always getting in my own way? This label self-sabotage is a misnomer in many ways. Getting in my own way, though, that is a reality in terms of our experience. We're going to talk about what is the unconscious mind, how does it work, and why is it particularly triggered and difficult to work with in divorce? And we're going to build on the last episode. The last episode, you might recall, was all about triggers. We talked about how we are triggered, what happens when we're triggered, what part of our brain is triggered. We talked about ways to manage that part of our brain, how to keep our cerebral cortex, the thinking part of our brain, larger, and the amygdala, which is the reactive part of our brain, smaller. Not that we don't want our amygdala, we just don't want it reacting every time we get a little emotionally upset. In fact, the emotional upset is what? The result of the amygdala being triggered. What triggers this? The unconscious mind. And that's what this episode is all about. The unconscious mind is 80% of every human being. It is our basic operating system. The unconscious mind is programmed in our family and in our schools and our culture, whoever we're hanging out with, roughly between the ages of 0 and 7 is when the basic structure for the unconscious mind is laid in. From 7 to 12, we're practicing and refining the programming that we've laid in at 0 to 7. From 12 to 18, we are adapting it to our social situations as our sense of self emerges. And in our 20s, we are launching as individuals into the world. Sounds great, right? Oh, I've got this part of my mind that's on automatic. It's the part that drives the car. It's the part that walks. It's the part that when I wake up at 2 in the morning and need to go to the bathroom and I'm half asleep, it just goes to the bathroom. It's the part that keeps me breathing. It's the part that keeps the heart beating. It does so many good things. Then why is it in my way sometimes? Why is it when I see that the other parent is taking an action, I identify that action as being about me and an attack, as opposed to maybe something they're doing for the children? The part of our mind that makes that decision is usually the unconscious mind. Our conscious mind serves as a filter and often an expression of the unconscious mind. However, the unconscious mind does have the ability to recognize when the programming or parts that are represented in the unconscious mind are not in alignment with where the conscious mind wants to go, and thus self-sabotage. The unconscious mind, let's be really clear, it wants what's best for us. Even though it feels like sometimes it's working against us, it wants what's best for us. The unconscious mind wants to be a helpful operating system. It wants to heal itself if there's a breakdown in the operating system. It wants to make sure that we're successful. It wants to make sure that we're happy. It wants to make sure that we're healthy and well. And yet, there are programs in the unconscious mind where we are overeating for some reason. There are programs in the unconscious mind where maybe we're bulimic. There are programs in the unconscious mind where we're yelling and screaming, even though our conscious mind knows that's not helpful. How can it be that these things can coexist? It is because somewhere inside of us, our unconscious mind believes that overeating, being bulimic, or yelling and screaming are what's best in those circumstances. And changing that is a matter of finding out where that programming lives in our unconscious mind and having the tools and resources to start to shift and change it. Another take on the unconscious mind is that it's made up of parts. Richard Schwartz, I talked about in another episode, wrote the book Internal Family Systems and There Are No Bad Parts, is a big proponent of the idea that our unconscious mind is made up of many sub-personalities. Who we were from 0 to 7 might be a personality. Who we are from 7 to 12 might be a personality. When I was a kid, I was sexually abused by a group of boys. And there's a part of me that was formed in that experience that is about 10 years old. So sometimes it isn't a developmental age range. Sometimes it isn't a developmental age range. Sometimes it's a traumatic experience that creates a personality or an area in our unconscious mind. And that 10-year-old boy, by the way, wants to protect me. It wants to protect me by being bullying. It wants to protect me by keeping away certain kinds of people that have the same look and feel as the kids who abused me at that time. I recognize that that part of my unconscious mind really has my well-being in heart. And that part of me has released the shame. That part of me has been reassigned to protect me in other ways because it really does want the best for me. That part of me also now recognizes that it's part of a greater whole, that I am much older than 10 years old today, and that who I am is a mature, responsible, intelligent human being who can navigate the waters that my 10-year-old self couldn't. This is another frame or another way of dealing with the unconscious mind. Some people talk about strategies and programmings. Some people talk about internal personalities, separate personalities. They're really the same thing. That personality is a strategy that is developed at a certain time based on certain circumstances, that it is created to avoid having that trauma repeat itself. So now you have an idea what the unconscious mind. It is a collection of programs. It might be thought of as a group of personalities. It might be thought of as a collection of strategies that are designed to help us and protect us. And the things that worked for us in one time of our life do not always work for us in another. The role and job of the unconscious mind is to nurture us and protect us. When we are in the divorce process, it is simple, easy, and sadly not uncommon for our unconscious mind and its programming or personalities or strategies, whatever you want to call these aspects of ourselves, to become triggered and reactive, as we talked about in the last episode. And when we are triggered and reactive, those strategies, personalities, or programs come out and repeat themselves. And unfortunately, they don't always work for us in the divorce process, particularly if the other person is triggered and activated and their programming is running. In fact, that is the norm. In fact, when people are getting divorced, they are often triggered, both of them, and their programs are running. The reason why they're getting divorced is they've been triggering the crap out of each other in marriage. They sabotage their marriage by not recognizing that the programming that they have is faulty for this situation, by not consciously recognizing it, by allowing their unconscious mind to run without observing that the behavior that they are engaging in is not helpful. Instead, their conscious mind allows the unconscious mind to blame the other person. And that is often why people are getting divorced. And when you're getting divorced and you have children together and that dynamic is allowed to play out, the children suffer more than anyone else. And that is why it is vital that we get a grip on what's going on, that A, we understand what's going on, that the self-sabotage, that getting in our own way is our unconscious mind trying to help us, and B, that we have agency in this. We have agency in this. It's not beyond our management. We can't control, well, that's not true. First, we can develop strategies to manage and control our unconscious mind. When we notice that we're triggered, we can do something to not express the reaction. There's an expression that I hear often, which is, I may not be responsible for the first thought, kill, 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 but I am responsible for the second part, love, 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 love. The second part is how I act. So I might be having a very violent response or a defensive response where I want to hurt or injure others or protect myself or my children, but I don't have to give in to that response. I can check myself. I can respond in a way that's different once I've reset. That's not changing the programming. That's just acknowledging that that program is not appropriate for this situation. So, strategy number one for the conscious mind is recognize the trigger, recognize the programming, reset, and restart. You can start over. This is really common behavioral approach to triggers in the unconscious mind. There is a line of thought that if we do this consistently, eventually our unconscious mind will fall into line. And sometimes that may happen. Sometimes it may not, however. Sometimes it requires digging deeper and really understanding what is the root cause of this strategy. Going back to the example that I gave you, if we've had a traumatic experience like being sexually abused at age 10, it is unlikely that simply recognizing that is going to make the difference. We're either going to need to engage in some form of parts integration or release work around emotions and beliefs that were created at that age so that we can reset and rework with that part and give it a new job, one that's more effective in these situations, one that isn't about being triggered, one that is about constructive behaviors in the face of other people's being triggered. That was a mouthful, huh? There are consequences of these unconscious reactions, and the consequences are A, our children suffer as they see us attacking one another. B, we suffer. We feel less than every time we lose control of ourselves. Right? Our conscious mind wants to control our unconscious mind. Be aware that anytime one part wants to control another, there's a form of servitude being placed on that other part and mastery on the first part that is basically part of an internal victim abuser dynamic. We do not want to have this dynamic with ourselves. Reference The Power of Ted, which is all about how to get past the victim abuser rescuer triangle. The last thing in the world we need is for this dynamic to be interacting within us. And so, really, what we want to get into the business of doing is managing ourselves. Management, as it's been handed down to us from the world of business, is about making sure that all parts feel heard and represented, and that collaboratively the parts find a best way that serves them all and suits them all in the process. I'm talking about internally right now. So we want to get to a place where we can acknowledge all the strategies, programs, and or voices inside of us and pick and choose amongst us the one that's most appropriate for the situation. We allow our unconscious mind to provide strategies, programs, voices for these situations, and our conscious mind, in allowing it to come up with ones that are appropriate for the situation, begins to build trust with the unconscious mind. We begin to build trust with our gut. We learn to follow our gut. We learn that sometimes a strategy may come up, and in our gut, the feeling is not positive. It's fear-based, hurt-based, sadness-based, anger-based, frustration-based, or blame-based. And that's the opportunity for our conscious mind to say to our unconscious mind, hey, what's going on there? What are we experiencing? What's going on? Oh, what does that remind you of? Really, what does that remind you of? Oh, it reminds you of mom. Oh, it reminds you of dad. Hey, well, what might be some other ways we could go with this? Because I don't think that's what's happening here. Look at their behavior and look at how in the ways that it's not like mom and dad. Yeah. So maybe the situation requires a different strategy. What might be a way that we could get through this that's best for everyone involved? Right? When we live in this place of win, what's best for everyone involved in ourselves, then we can start to express that in our interactions with others. And it sounds so simple, and it is, but it's not so easy sometimes, because really allowing these parts to express themselves and allowing particularly the parts of ourselves that are hurt and sad and fearful to express themselves is almost countercultural. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. When you fall off a horse, you get back on it. And allowing these parts to speak might feel weak, but it's actually strength. Allowing these parts to speak is strength, because in the face of those emotions and allowing ourselves to have them, we can find a way through that is caring, that is considerate of all parties involved internally and externally, that gives us a voice that is our true self. Some people would call it our divine spark. We allow our divine spark to be in the driver's seat. And when we allow our divine spark to be in the driver's seat, that's when the opportunity to release old emotions and reset beliefs that or assumptions that no longer work for us come. If you have questions about this, please reach out to me at Rich in Relationship. If you have work you're interested in doing on this, schedule a free call with me and I'll help you find your next step, whether it be work with me or work with someone else or a free program or a group. Will help you find the place that's most appropriate for you. I'm all about people going to the place that's most appropriate because that's where the good stuff happens. When there's a bad fit, nothing good happens. I would be interested to hear your stories, both of feeling like a victim of yourself and feeling like you're taking the lead in your life. And it's interesting that taking the lead in your life really looks like allowing all of who you are to find expression and working collaboratively with all of yourself in your unconscious mind. And you may ask yourself, it's my unconscious mind, how do I do that? A lot of times working with a professional is going to help reveal that. Asking yourself the right questions, imagining those parts in yourself or those strategies in yourself and what they might need and what they might want. A lot of healing can come through this. Sometimes participating in groups where there's a certain degree of role play is going to help those parts to emerge and for healing to happen. There are a lot of ways that we can bring these parts out. For now, in your divorce process, my best next advice would be when you notice yourself getting angry, meaning that you're so angry that there's no room for any other feeling, you're probably executing a strategy program or allowing a part from your past to run the show. And you might want to step back and take a look at it and reset. If you're experiencing anger and you're able to touch other emotions at the same time, then you're experiencing an appropriate or warranted emotion. And how you express it is going to be toned down and filtered to some extent through those other emotions that are present. So anytime that we're one feeling with huge intensity, like a 10 instead of a 4, the chances are we're triggered and we're experiencing unwarranted or inappropriate emotion. And the next best thing that we can do for ourselves before, if we're not yet already doing personal work on working through these strategies and programs and parts, is to give ourselves time to chill out and not act it out, but come back to the conversation with the other parent that we're divorcing so that it can be calm and rational. Please follow, subscribe if this is hitting home with you, share it with other people. The information we're giving on this podcast is priceless. And thank you for listening to another episode of Rich in Relationship.